take somewhere 20 minutes. Means not so easy, so you must be prepared. So we became stopped somewhere here, and I want to demonstrate you this mechanism, how does it work. So I have one more movie to show you. So here, okay, so have a look. So what is important for us? Oops. So this point. So the tangent is connected here. So this is in accordance with our calculations that we had. So actually, this point was important for us, and we had provided the calculations following this design, and we estimated that the force to the muscle from the muscle applied to load some weight is roughly 10 times more than the weight. So next, we came to analyze what is the force to the tendon that is here when we are staying on the fingers. So this is the scheme of our skeleton in this position. So we are staying on the ground. So this is a design to make calculations. So this is the point that the center of rotation. So now we will be lifted. So this is the scheme again. So this is the weight, the force, the gravitation force. And this is the scheme for calculation again. So now we are lifted. The situation is changed. So the force F must be applied here from the tendon side to lift our body. So that is why we're now in such a position. So now again the scheme for calculation is this one. So this is the force of our weight, gravitation force. It's shifted, you see. Instead of the position here, it is shifted a little bit. So, and is applied somewhere here, approximately. So if we go to translate this force in parallel, not the parallel, it's the same line. So we meet somewhere the point somewhere here, approximately here. So now it is our calculation scheme. Maybe some questions about the scheme? Is everything clear?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our schemes for calculation, and have a look. We transform this P force into the force that is in perpendicular to the foot, P star. So it is somewhere here. And so there are the shoulders of the levers in this case. And now we go to write the equation for the torques. From this one, we can get that F with L2 must be equal with P star multiplied with L1. That is why we have such a formula. So if you identify this angle phi, for instance, we can measure it. So P star can be described using P, the cosinus of phi. So L1, this one, L1, may be described as L2 subtracted L3 subtracted from L2. So this one. So if we know this length, h, from anthropometric measurements, for instance, we can calculate L3. So this one, approximately. This is h to the tangents of phi. Is this clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So in this case, L1, we substitute L3 with L3 here. L1 is this one. And finally, we have the force for the independence of the angle phi, the properties of the body, H, anthropometric properties, the length of the foot, and the angle phi. So this is the formula from the previous slide. And now let's go to estimate the ratio of F to P for the normal body dimension. For instance, L2 is 300 millimeters, and H is approximately 1 meter, 90 centimeters or 900 millimeters. So 300 millimeters for the foot, and for the leg, approximately for the half of the body, approximately 90 centimeters. So in this case, F to P is this one. So H is 900, L2 is, oh my God, there is a mistake. So 3 sinus. Oh, this is a mistake. So next, if we go to calculate this ratio, and now I provide you with a diagram that I calculated. So this is a diagram of the ratio F to P, independence of the angle phi. So have a look, more angle, more ratio. F to P, more load to the tendon. So again, the angle phi just a second, just to remind you. So this is our angle. This is our angle. So if the angle phi is larger, so the force to the tendon is increased. So, and very dramatically, have a look, can be much more higher than the weight of the body, maybe several times. So this is very dangerous. So that is why this tendon may be very overloaded. And actually, this is the reason when the sportsmen are requested before to start, for instance, some competitions, to make exercises to increase the metabolic reactions or reactions of the metabolic, the rate of the metabolic reactions here, so-called, we are saying, so please heat your muscles, means they must become more elastic. The tendon must be more elastic to prevent on the damage of the tendon, to prevent the damage of the tendon. Is this clear?
Yeah.
Foreign students, I don't hear you. Is this clear for you?
Yes.
Okay, so now we go to consider the plain foot. So this is a normal one, and this is so-called plain. So you see some deformation of this part of the skeleton, of the bones, and that is why now we go to consider what can be happen in this case with this deviation against the normal one. What can be happen with the redistribution of the load. So this is our model. This is a point when the force is applied, and this is like the lever. So the lengths of the shoulders, L1 and L2. for the normal food, we have such a scheme. This is our weight. So this is our scheme from the previous slide. So, and we have the formula for F, for this one, that depends on P and depends on this angle. That's very important. Depends on the angle. And now the plain food. You see, the angle is different. It's less in this case. The length of the shoulder is higher. Have a look. What does it mean? The length L1 is longer than L1 for the normal one. It's longer. Means F, the force for the tendon, is higher. The cosinus is larger because the angle phi is less. Again, this one. So finally, we have that the tendon is overloaded because just of the defect of the skeleton. So that is why when these people are walking for a long time, they are saying that they feel the pains in the foot, with the muscles and the tendons that is here. How to help them? We need to provide the support for these bones to make the calf like this one. Is this clear? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So the next one, we could consider the neck. So this is the skeleton and this is the scheme of the muscles at this area. So this is the rotation center. The center of the mass of the scalp is somewhere here. So it means here, here. So this is the load, means the weight of the scalp, of the head, we can say. So, and this is the force that comes from the tendon to make the balance. So this is the scheme. P is here and F is here. So the length of the shoulders. The force for the tendon is L1 to L2 with P. So the ratio of L1 to L2 is approximately 0.5. So that is why this force from the tendon, from this one, is approximately the half of the weight of the head, approximately. So this means this tendon isn't so overloaded. That is actually good. And now we'll go to consider one more movie. Oops. Okay. So now we need to see the jaw. This one. So this is the rotation center. Have a look, and perhaps the tendon is somewhere here to lift the jaw. So again, so have a look at these motions. Okay. So, and now we go to see one more picture. So have a look. This is a retention, yeah, and these are the muscles. So this is a rotation center. This is a lever. This is a force, the load, actually, that we apply to the G's, or actually to this, to the jaw, to the lower jaw bone. So, and this is a force, this one, that we need to lift it to close the mouth, like today. Okay. Okay. So now we see this motion. So now we see this motion, you see. So again, what is important for us? Okay, great. Okay, so this is a rotation point. Yeah, again, a little bit doesn't like. You see, something is wrong. Okay. So for us, it was important. You see that really the tendon is somewhere here to get the bone up. So now we go to calculate. So this is our scheme. This is the upper jaw. This is the lower one. So this is the force from the tendon. And this is the load that we apply during our eating. So the levers, L1 and L2. And from the torque equation, we have this torque equilibrium equation, we have this formula. So that this one multiplied with L2 must be equal to P with L1. From this, we have this formula. So this tendon force more or less is a constant. For instance, if you assume, so that is why if this load P is increased, have a look, if it is increased, so F is increased too, but it is restricted by the tendon properties. So that is why to don't overload F, we need to decrease the ratio L1 to L2. If this is increased, to don't overload, we need to decrease this one. So there is only one option to decrease L1 to L2. We can't do anything with L2 because it is strongly connected to the tendencies point. However, this length may be decreased when we move P in this direction. So we need to decrease L1. Have a look. If we have the nut, we put the nut to chop it. We put the nut into our month and we apply the inner teeth to crack the nut because the load is tremendously large. When we are eating, so this means that we decrease L1. When we are eating the very soft cake, we don't need to use this cheese because the load here is very weak, very small, and the tendon forces are not so large in this case. So that is why we apply the front teeth. Is the technology of eating clear to you? Hello?
Yeah.
So have a look about the design of the tooth. So these teeth are not so strong, but these ones are very strong. You see, really, because of the design, the mass of the material here is larger than this one. The mechanical properties of this one tooth is higher, means the damaging forces here are higher than here. Because, just because from mechanics, you see, eating the cake, we don't apply the large force here, means we don't apply the large force from the tendon side somewhere here. Just because of this. The questions, please. No questions?
Now your turn.
No.
So now conclusion, very short conclusion. Have a look. We have two kinds of levers. These kind of levers demonstrate that the force against the load is larger than the load in these two cases. So F is larger than P. In this case, we don't win force, but we win velocity. Really, if you remember, this bone, this one, has a very high capacity for the very high velocity. For instance, the boxer sportsman needs to move this end of this end with a very high velocity to provide the very strong shock. Here too, we need to run very fast. That is why, you see, we don't win the force, but we win velocity. In this case, we can vary the force. And actually, we can say yes. In this case, we can win the velocity, means to eat faster. But from the physiological point, not necessary to do this. That is why functionally, the design of this lever is connected with the technology or technique to eat. Not the main reason of this design is to eat fast. So here, the force from the tendon is less than the load. We don't win velocity in this case. We win the force. Really, we don't need to have a very fast motion of the head, but the head is rather heavy, and that is why we need to win the force from the tendon. So if we need the very fast, if we need to win the velocity, we apply the lever in our body when F is larger than P, and vice versa. If we don't need to win the velocity, we apply the mechanism, the levers, where F is less than P. The questions, please.
No.
Okay. What will you say if we work without the break because we lose somewhere 10-15 minutes? Is it fine with you? Varam bez pārtraukuma strādāt.
Jā,
Jā.
So equilibrium. So this is a floor, and this is a wall. And now this some guy is staying in such a position. How do you think? Is it possible to keep the balance? Please. To keep the balance exactly in such a position.
man liekas, ka
Manuprāt,
nē.
nē.
No, why? Can you explain?
Jo masas centrs aizies pārāk tālu no sienas, manuprāt.
Un?
Bet muguras muskuļi tik to var nodrošināt, manuprāt, kad
Pieņemsim,
nav
ka var.
notur līdzsvarā.
Pieņemsim, ka var. Par to mēs pagaidām nerunājam.
Bet vairāk svara jau būs uz ķermeņa augšdaļu nekā uz apakšdaļu.
Nu, es šeit arī neesmu pārliecināts, mums vajag to pierādīt. Okay, so let's go ahead. So the question is it possible to keep such a position? To keep the balance in such a position? So this is the rotation center. The torque momentum sum must be equal to 0 for the balance. So we know the distribution of the masses over the body. And now we go to calculate. So 8% at this length, somewhere. 5 and 2% somewhere here. Again, 47% somewhere here. And so 23, 11, 4% here. Have a look what we have. We have the torque rotation, this direction from this load, from this weight, from this again, this direction, and this direction. We don't have any torques that rotate on the back direction. That is why we can't keep the balance. Let us write the equation. So this is the equation for such a situation, for such a position. So the sum of the torques is larger than 0. Is this clear? Oh.
Jā.
So this means that really the balance can't be kept. It is impossible. If you stay at the auditorium, typically I'm asking to one student to come to the wall and to demonstrate that really it is impossible. So what can we do? We can regroup the centers of masses, like this one. Look, if we compare with this situation, with this position, we regrouped this one, masses, they are now here, and we have moved this mass back. Okay, so you see, we had this one, and now we have this one. So now we have the momentum, the torques that can rotate in this direction from left to right against the clock, So this torque works like the clock direction, this clock, but this one against the clock. So in this case, instead of the equations that we had before, we have minuses, and we can keep the total, the summarized torque that is equal to 0. How? That's our feeling. We are regrouping our centers of masses, the centers of masses of our body, to keep the balance. At least we demonstrate now that yes, it's possible, but it is definitely impossible to keep the balance in such a position. The question, please.
Nav jautājumu.
So this is a final formula when we regroup our body. So have a look, we have really minuses here, and these minuses may be controlled by these shoulder lenses. And what is important, we keep this one that is very, very high weight at 0. So the shoulder of the center of mass of the torso is equal to 0. That is why the torque is tremendously small. So what we see here, so this is an example of regrouping. You see, this is really stable position, but not confidently stable, because a little bit of moving of this mass of the center and he is falling down ahead. But he needs this to get the first impulse on the first momentum to jump in water and to run and to start to swim very fast. So this is the reason about such a position, and have a look at this pedestal. It's also designed to assist to the sportsman to keep such a position with a very, very weak moving of the mass, center of the mass is ahead. Immediately he is falling down and he is getting additional momentum to start. Is this clear? Hello?
Yeah.
So now about this guy, he is keeping the balance very easy, you see. So this is the center of rotations, for instance, the length and the mass here. The mass here isn't so high against this one, and that is why he is keeping the hands ahead. Straight, you see, to get the additional torque in this direction to balance the torque from this one. So one more. This is the center of the mass of the body. mg, this is the weight. And now we are keeping the case. When we keep the case, we have the torque in this direction. And that is why we need to move the center of mass of our body to have the torque in the opposite direction. So we are moving the center of mass to have the torque against this rotation center. So one torque is working against the clock, the second one from the case works on the clock. Is this clear? Oh.
Yeah.
So have a look now. We are staying here, and there is some force. For instance, somebody is pushing me on the shoulder. In this case, the torque is 1.5 approximately meter with this force. So to keep the balance, I am standing in such a position, so extending the feet. You see, this length is a little bit less in such a case. You see, that is why the torque is less. Instead of 1.5, I have 1.2. That is why it's easy to resist to this force. And typically the sportsmen, never you can find the sportsman that is staying in such a position. No, the feet are located in the extended length to facilitate the balance. Is this clear?
Yeah.
So if, for instance, we move the center of mass in this direction, we can resist to this force too, because the torque of this force works in this direction. However, now the mass, the weight, the torque of this weight force works in this direction, in the opposite one. And this is the reason that it's easy to keep the balance. How do you know that we are keeping the balance? We have somewhere the sensor of the balance. And this sensor must deliver the information to us in 3 planes. In this one, in the perpendicular one, and in the horizontal one. The sensor is located here in our air. It's here. This is a sensor. This is so-called vestibular apparatus. So this is a design. Have a look. One plane, the second plane, and the third plane. 3 arcs there are. Each of the arc is responsible. Each of the arcs is responsible to generate the signal on unbalancing of the body in the specific plane, in the vertical, horizontal, 2 verticals and 1 horizontal. So this is 2 verticals. These are 2 verticals, and the horizontal. So 1, if you go to have a look at the cross section of these sensors, we can meet like the tube, like the arc-like tube. It's filled with a gel, like the liquid, and the surface, the inside surface of this tube is coated with receptors that feel the liquid location in this tube. Have a look. The receptors are sending the signal to the brain, and the brain gives the signal to the muscles to adjust our body to keep the balance. So this is the liquid. So for instance, this is a balanced position. The receptors here and here are uniformly loaded. The receptors that are here, they don't feel the liquid. The receptors here also don't feel the liquid. So everything is balanced. Now the position of the body is changed, like this one. The liquid is redistributed within the tube, and the different redistribution is among the receptors. Now the receptors are loaded here, but here more receptors became unloaded from water. So then this is the signal from the receptors go to the brain, and brains gives the signal to the muscles to keep the balance, to move the human body back. Is the idea clear?
Yeah.
So somewhen we feel that our body is accelerated. How do you think? What is the acceleration sensor of our body? What is the acceleration center?
Sirds,
Why?
tāpēc, ka pātrinās sirdsdarbību.
Not clear to me. You said the heart. Why heart? How can you explain that heart is the acceleration center, sensor? Some other versions, please.
Vai tad vestibulārais aparāts arī nedarbojas kā pātrinājuma uztvērējs?
Following the design of this vestibular apparatus, we can't say that this is the accelerator sensor. acceleration center. This is the center of the position, that's true. But we didn't feel any features of the acceleration. Okay, some more ideas. So for instance, we are falling down. We feel the acceleration. So the internal soft organs altogether, including the heart, are the acceleration sensors. Because when the body, for instance, is falling down, because of the inertia, the soft organs, the kidney, the stomach, the heart, they are still at the same position for some short time. And so we feel that they are moved within our body, and our internal body receptors feel this movement of our internal organs. Is this clear?
Yeah.
So centrifugal forces. So we know from physics, if some mass is rotating with a velocity v, the centrifugal force Fc does work. So this force is equal to mv squared divided with r, where the r is the radius of the orbit. Omega is the angle velocity or angular velocity. So v is omega with r, or omega can be described as 2 pi n, when n is the number of revolutions per second. So in this case, the centrifugal force is equal to m2 pi n square with r. What we see here, the centrifugal force increases dramatically if we increase the number of revolutions per second. Why dramatically? Because it is a square power. A little bit to increase n, F is increased dramatically. So this means that the centrifugal forces work on the mass. Different masses feel different centrifugal forces. If so, these masses may be separated if they have the capacity for movement. So the masses with a higher, the masses that have higher values are moved by the larger forces than the light masses. So now we see in practice again. Oh, I'm sorry, we need sound. Now I share the sign with you too. Do you see my screen? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a tube of blood which is clotted, and we're gonna separate the cells from the liquid and through the centrifuge and put it in here, along with a balance, and it kind of swings as it spins to separate the liquid from the cells, and this takes about 5 minutes to do, and we start it. Okay, so now it's spun for 5 minutes, and it has moved over because it wasn't balanced too well, and it's still spinning a bit. It's probably gonna have to wait a little longer. What? Where do you keep all your bags and stuff? Waiting. I'll move this back over a bit. All right.
So, and now see how the
So-
liquid, the particles of the liquid became separated. So,
Which is still the same.
so this was a balance.
Then we have
Yeah.
our blood, which is now
Now we see that they are separated. You see, the more
cells
heavy became
after spinning
to
for
the
5 minutes.
peripheral part, and the lighter are at the center. Is this clear? The question, please. Hello.
Ir skaidrs.
Okay. Now we see it's a sportsman that is running on the stadium, and for instance, somewhere the way was straight, and this is at the radius, at the arc. He is now at the arc, and have a look. He is changing the position of the body. Somewhere running here, the body is straight, vertical direction. Now it is a little bit sleepy. So because he feels the centrifugal force that works in this direction when he is in the arc. And to compensate this force, he needs to provide, have a look, he needs to provide the force in this direction a little bit. So that is why he's moving the mass of the center. So this is a normal force that works from this one. And this is a force that compensates the centrifugal force. Is this clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we are coming to the other topic. So we'll speak about liquids. So our body consists approximately 60–70% of liquid. And definitely we need to speak about liquid too. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's a very short paragraph from mechanics, and after that liquid. So we speak now, a very short paragraph, about the design, how to design the mechanisms. So you can say me, oh yeah, we have the course of designing of medical equipment, and yes, we know how to do. Nevertheless, I show you the idea to design the mechanism, and we come with this idea to the design, to the scheme, or to the design of the processes. But first we need to understand what does it mean sintering of the mechanism. So the final goal is to meet the design of the processes. For instance, this is a bioprocesses that we expect to design. The theoretical fundament of this approach is based on the idea by Assur. He was from Russia, somewhere at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. He was from mechanics. I can say theoretical mechanics mainly. And he said the very simple ideas. For instance, we have the ball. They're very small, for instance, very hard, very solid. And this ball has the freedoms that allow to the ball to be moved. How do you think how many freedoms has this ball? Please? How many freedoms?
6.
Why 6?
3 directions and 3 rotations.
That's true. X, Y, Z. The direction is alongside this axis. And 3 rotations around this axis. Altogether 6. If I have n balls, the number of balls is n. Altogether, I have the number of the freedoms for these ball system 6n. Now let's assume the 2 balls are connected. If they are connected, this means that they deliver the element of the mechanism, because the balls, if they are not freedoms, they can provide mechanism. Even or only we connect the balls, we have the mechanism. So the minimum number of the balls to start to develop the mechanism is 2. That is why if we have n balls in the mechanism and 2 balls we need to provide the mechanism, this means that these 2 balls are connected with 1 bond, means from these 2 balls I need to subtract 1 freedom. This means for the mechanism that has the simplest couples, ball-ball couples, the number of freedoms is 6 with n minus 1. Is this clear?
Yeah.
So n minus 1, I substitute with n small, and finally I have the formula that W, the number of freedom, is 6n, when n is the number of the simplest mechanisms within my machine. So this is the number of freedoms if I have n simplest mechanisms. Now let's go to consider what does it mean, this simplest mechanism. So this is the simplest mechanism that restricts only 1 freedom. So this vertical one, this mechanism doesn't have the motion in this direction. It has everything, all of the motions, except of the vertical one in z direction. So that is why the number of the freedoms for such a mechanism is 6n minus 1. Is this clear?
Yeah.
This mechanism is named the couple of or the pair of the first class. The first class pair. If we have the number of these pairs, of these couples, P1, the number of the restrictions altogether will become minus 1 with P1, because each P1 restrict one motion, this one. If we have P, the number of these pairs, the total number of the restrictions within the mechanism is 1 with P1. Is this clear? Hello?
Yep.
Now let's consider the second class pair. The second class means that we need to restrict one more motion, for instance, by this way. In this case, or maybe by this way, in this case, we restrict the motion alongside y. So this is switched off. If the number of the pairs is P2, each of them restricts 2 freedoms. That is why the number of the freedoms restricted or subtracted from the freedoms of the entire mechanism is minus 2P2. Is this clear?
Yeah.
The third class of pair must restrict one more motion, so means 3 motions must be restricted. Like this one, this is a mechanism. So this motion alongside X is restricted. Only rotations we have here. If the number of these pairs is P3, the total number of the restrictions is 3 with P3. The fourth class mechanism, we restrict one more motion. In this case, we restrict the rotation against Z and rotation against X. We have the rotation against Y. So if the number of the pairs is P4, each of them restricts 4 motions, 4 freedoms. So the number of the freedoms for the mechanism that is assembled of the 4 class pairs is minus 4P4. The fifth class, we need to restrict one more, means to leave just one freedom. So this one is restricted and we have only in the direction Y, only one freedom we have. So the number of these pairs is P5 and the total number of the restrictions that is delivered by these pairs is 5 with P5. Now, is it clear?
Yeah.
Next, the question from my side. Let us discuss, can I design the 6th class pair? Please. If so, how? Can I design the 6th class pair?
Manuprāt, ka nē.
Why?
Tāpēc, ka pēc tās formuliņas tas palielināsies uz 6 un kopā tas būs 0, un tad tas vairs nav mehānisms.
Pēdējie vārdi ir pareizi, bet 0 varētu nebūt. Nē, jums ir taisnība, jā, būs 0, kopumā arī būs 0. Jā, tātad, ja mēs teiksim, ka mēs ierobežosim, if I say that we restrict 6 freedoms within the pair, this means that it isn't the pair anymore. Means no motions, no pair, no mechanism. That is why it is impossible to write any formula for the 6th class pair. It doesn't exist. Is it clear? Hello? Is it clear?
Yeah.
So, doesn't exist. Now, the entire formula that offered answer, we need to summarize all of our results. So this is the sum of our results. If the mechanism consists of first, second, third, fourth, and fifth class of pairs, each of them restricts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 freedoms correspondingly. So this is a full formula of Assur, of Bayes Assur, where n is the number of the pairs within the mechanism. Now, is this formula clear? I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah.
Now we go to design the processes. Does this work or not? No. So now we're trying to design the processes for the arm.
In this animation here, we can see the forearm going through pronation and supination.
So
here we have
have a
pronation.
look.
And
The
then
arm
here we
has
have
rotation in
supination.
this direction.
Because the distal
It has
attachment of biceps brachii
angular
attaches onto the
rotation
radius,
and
it is
has
affected by forearm
horizontal
position.
rotation. So altogether, the arm has 3 motions. Is it clear?
Yep.
So the number of freedoms for the processes that substitutes the arm must be equal to 3. So now we go to design. So this is the Assur formula. And we go to apply this formula to find the condition when W is equal to 3. The most simple mechanism is the most reliable mechanism. The most simple mechanism is a mechanism that consists of the minimum number of parts. So that is why the number of the parts, the number of the pairs, for the simplest mechanism must be equal to unit. If so, n is equal to unit, W must be equal to 3. I go to find what are the conditions to, what are the pairs to meet these conditions. Here we need to have 3, here 6, somewhere here we need to get the pair that delivers 3. So 6n minus W must be equal to 3. So this means that this one must be equal to 3. Let us go to have a look at this formula. What is the simplest way to meet 3? The simplest. Please. Nu, jūsu versijas. Kā visvienkāršāk dabūt trīnieku? Pardon? P? Please repeat. P3 is 1. That's true. So this means the simplest solution is we have to cancel everything except of 3p3. P3 is 1, means altogether we have 3 with 1 is 3. So, and this is a solution. The mechanism processes must be the pair of the set class. Just one pair of the set class. Nothing else. Have a look. what does it mean, the mechanism of the set class? So for instance, this one or this one. Let's go to design. So this is a set class mechanism. The process is ready. The design is ready. Now we go to make some detailed design with the engines, with the wires, everything. But the idea of the process is clear now for us. The questions, please. Hello? Jautājumi. Hello?
Nav jautājumu.
Okay. And now we come to the liquid.